welcome or welcome back to my channel. So what I'm going to go over today for you guys is all of the audiobooks I listened to in 2024. I know we are in 2025, but just barely, and I wanted to kind of give you guys some kind of recap because we didn't really get to know each other as far as like book content goes. Some of the audiobooks I did do immersive reading with, so that means I had the audiobook going while I was reading with the physical book. A lot of the audiobooks I don't have the physical book for, so I'll put a picture of it like here on the screen for you guys. So I'm gonna go ahead and start this thing off right. I'm sorry if the lighting is a little weird. I do have a ring light right here. I know you guys can probably see it reflecting in my glasses, so I'm so sorry for that glare. I did take a lot of the books off of this shelf right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and kick it off. And I do have my phone here. So I did, again, I use Libby, and I'll go into more detail about what that app is in a completely different video. I also use Spotify, and then towards the very end of the year, like the last 2 months, I used Audible. So I'm going to start with Libby because it has the most books in it. So I read The Nanny by Lana Ferguson. I'll post a picture here or here. It just depends. I thought this book was okay. It was a bit long. It was 13 hours, and I listened to my books on 1.75 speed. And then also along with it, I'll put the rating for you guys if I have the rating, because I did jump into using Goodreads as well as Fable towards the end of last year. So I did read The Nanny. I thought it was okay. It was about a girl who was pretty much down on her luck, and then she ended up taking a nannying position with a guy who, I want to say he pretty much fired her, and then she ended up getting back at him by being his nanny, and the guy is an executive chef, and then she calls him a DILF. But she also is on OnlyFans, and he's like one of her biggest fans. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering this as far as like a retelling without too many spoilers. I did read this in January of last year, so I mean, it was an okay book. Obviously not that memorable. It was super long, but it was okay. The next book I read in January was Lessons in Chemistry. That book I did love. I'm thinking about getting Apple TV subscription for a month just so that I can watch that show, because anything that is historical fiction or contemporary fiction or deals with like women and all the strife and the things that we've had to deal with throughout history, that always grips me. This was a really, really good read. I want to say I gave it anywhere between 4 and 5 stars. I highly suggest you read it. Woman, man, whoever, just please pick that book up. It was extremely, extremely good. And I'm also the next book I read was Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Aside from the narrators, aside from the narrator's like accent, that is the only reason why I got sucked into these books. But I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I am not a big Sally Rooney fan. Which you guys are gonna be like, what the hell? Because the next book I read is another Sally Rooney book, but I don't know, something about the books, it just kind of makes it really hard to get into. I don't know if it's like the topic or the characters themselves, but the way they're described in the books, I can't really, the way I picture them in my head is not, it doesn't mesh up, if that makes sense. Like when I read a book, I always try to picture the characters, the setting, whatever's going on in my mind. And for the Sally Rooney books, I just couldn't do it. And for me, I really don't like latch onto her story until about the halfway point. So yeah, I did read Conversations with Friends. And then for whatever reason in February, I ended up reading Always in December by Emily Stone. I'm going to be honest with you, I barely remember that book. So we're just going to push for it. The next book in February that I read was Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. Gonna be honest, barely remember anything about the book. Again, Sally Rooney's books are hard for me to get into, but I do like the narrator's accent. The next couple of books, actually, I do happen to have the physical book, and this is where like my immersive reading start, because I was like, why am I struggling to pronounce some of the characters' names and some of the sayings and all these good things when I can just listen to it on Libby or Spotify or whatever. And you guys, I'm so upset because this book came with me, went traveling with me when I left for my deployment, and it got destroyed in my bag. But F Bride by Ali Hazelwood, I'm so upset about this, and it was the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition. I think I'll just like tape that little piece that's missing because I do have it. It is stuck in this book. But this was I picked this up on a whim. When I saw that Allie Hazelwood did a vampire werewolf romance with a twist, I was like, okay, yeah, let me give her a chance, because I do really like Allie Hazelwood's books. Allie Hazelwood and Christina Lauren are other authors that I got into when I started reading again, but this book is really interesting. You guys, please pick it up. So basically, the main character's name, the vampire female, is Misery, and the werewolf male is Lo. They essentially have to get married. It's a marriage of convenience. And then of course they become enemies. It's enemies to lovers as well. And the story and the plot twist behind this is very interesting. I am a huge fan of witches, vampires, werewolves. Like, I've been sucked in since Twilight, and then again really sucked in with Tracy Wolf's Crave series. So this, Allie Hazelwood is already one of my favorite authors. This just kind of made like my whole day when I saw this book in the store. So definitely check it out. That's all I'm gonna give you guys, again, because me personally, when I read books, I like to go in blind. Like, I go off the vibes of the cover, and then that is it. I try not to even read the blurb. But if you guys haven't picked this up, please pick it up. I did read it super early, because I think it came out like in the spring of last year, and I ended up reading it in March. So the next book that I read, and I know it's like super popular, and I really want to get The Dead Romantics by this author, and that's gonna be The 7 Year Slip. This was a very like interesting story, because Ashley Poston, for whatever reason, she does magical realism really well. She finds a way to integrate that into her story, and I love that. And there's another author, I want to say, who does that really well. I don't know where that book went though. This doesn't count as one of those books, but Rebecca Surley, I think that's how you say her name, in 5 years, and then I think I read One Italian Summer. She does magical realism really well. So when I found out that Ashley Poston does as well, or Poston, I'm sorry, Ashley Poston, I had to pick this book up. And then I also have, what else did she do? A novel love story. I did like this book more than I like this book, but you guys, if you are interested in that, please pick it up. The female main character ends up moving into her aunt's apartment when she passed away, because she left it to her in her will. And whenever she's in this apartment, she gets thrown back into the past 7 years. So while she's in the past, she's technically the male main character's future, and then they are trying to, like, you know, figure out what the hell is going on and why. But it is a very interesting book. And then I am going to pick up The Dead Romantics and then read that for spooky season for this upcoming year. The next audiobook that I read, it's going to be Wreck the Halls by Tessa Bailey. I remember very little about the book. I think it was okay. This was definitely something I read while I was in the midst of traveling and trying to get my mind together as far as like what was going on. Next book I read was The Summer Place by Jennifer Weiner, or is it Weiner? I don't know. Barely remember it. I don't think I rated it like too low. It was okay. And then the next book that I read, I do want to caveat and say to you guys, I do read a lot of finance and like self-help books as well. I do sprinkle that in just to kind of give myself a palate cleanse, or try to remember what it is that I'm trying to do with my life. So if there are books in here that you have not heard, or that are not popular by, you know, Book Talk or BookTube or Bookstagram, that's probably why. But those books do interest me. The next book that I read was The Little Book of Hague. I'm not going to explain those, because I don't think anybody has a huge interest in those kind of books, but I will leave the rating and the picture of the book right there. The next book, getting back into, you know, regular books, is Bad Summer People. I remember really not liking this book. It was super messy. There were so many characters, and the plot was like all over the place. I pushed through, because I really have never DNF'd a book, but I think this year, if I ever pick up a book that I don't like, or listen to an audiobook that I don't like, I think I'm just gonna like DNF it, because this book was not the best. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. Another one of those kind of like self-help books was Dopamine Nation by Anna Limbick. I think that's how you pronounce her name. Again, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail with that one. Then I started to get into like my queer reads, or my LGBTQ plus. I don't know all of the letters that go behind it. I don't want to butcher that, but I do love queer reads. So One Last Stop by Casey McQuinston. I think that's how you say it. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that. That book was very interesting because it also had an element of magical realism in it. The two female main characters, one of them was kind of just like living her life, and then she gets on the train and she meets this other female who is pretty much, she's from the past but she's stuck in the future, but she's stuck on the train, like she can't get off the train. So that was interesting, and the way the spice was done in this book was interesting as well. So if you guys haven't heard of it, check it out. The next book that's more along like the self-help is going to be Being Mortal by Atul Gwande. Again, I'm sorry for butchering this. I'm not going to explain those because that's my cup of tea. I don't think it's everybody else's cup of tea. The next book that I read, because I was trying to get into a Stephenie Meyer kick just to kind of put me back into the mood, because occasionally I do reread the Twilight books. I always reread and watch the Harry Potter movies. So yes, but I didn't know she also had a book called The Host as well as The Chemist. I'm going to say these books, The Host, there's actually also a movie on Amazon Prime, I want to say. I don't know if it's on like Netflix or anything like that, but if you have Amazon Prime and you have Amazon Prime Video, The Host is on there. I will say I didn't enjoy the book, and then I watched the movie, and then a lot of the main points that the book was trying to make, it made sense after I watched the movie. This book, the audiobook, is 23 hours worth of listening. It's like the longest book I read or listened to for the year. And let me tell you, I didn't enjoy it as much. I can't remember what I rated. I don't know if it's like a 2.5 to like a 3.5, but I didn't care for it because I guess I'm just so used to her vampire werewolf stuff that this just didn't sit right with me or click right with me. Because I don't know, like it's really hard for me to get into like sci-fi alien-esque type books. But after watching the movie, it clicked. It didn't make me change my rating, but it did click. And then again, The Chemist by Stephenie Meyer or Mayer. That book was interesting because it was definitely giving action-packed spy, a little bit of suspense because you didn't know what truly was going to happen. That was pretty long too, 17 hours. I didn't particularly care for how the story was written, but I did give it a higher rating than I gave The Host, if that makes sense. It was interesting and a little heartbreaking as well. So if you guys are into her other books or you didn't know about it, please go and read them. They are pretty old. I just ended up reading them in 2024. This was in June. We're going to go ahead and jump into July. I did 2 books in July. I read The Rom-Commers by Catherine Center, and I really wanted to get that book, but it was a hardback or a hardcover, and it also had the sprayed edges. The sprayed edges almost got me, but I am not a huge fan of hardcover. I have a few right here, and then I have one more. Actually, I have one right here. That's Before the Coffee Gets Cold, and then I also have the Spell Shop. But I am not the biggest fan of hardcover books because I don't feel like they're as easily manipulated, like with a floppy book, like a paper cover book. Like I can do these kind of things and it'll go the way that I need it to. Hardcover books are really stiff. They do look nice, especially like those special edition ones, but I prefer paper cover to hardcover. So that is why I didn't get the Rom-Commers. It was interesting, the take on it. I will say I'm not the biggest Catherine Center fan. I did read a few of her other books, but again, they're just like somewhat feel good. You already know what's gonna happen. It seems like a lot of her books are like enemies to lovers and forced proximity, because I read The Bodyguard by her and it was kind of giving the same vibe, if I'm being completely honest. And then right after that, I read Happily Never After by Lynn Painter. The premise of this book was different because it was the female main character and the male main character end up teaming up to help women or men get out of marriages that they really don't want to be in, but otherwise they would be stuck or indebted to the family if they didn't use them. The premise behind this was hilarious because the male main character teamed up with the female main character's maid of honor best friend to help stop her wedding. And then she ended up teaming up with him to stop other people from potentially ruining their lives. It was funny. I think I gave it a 3.5. I'll have the rating somewhere. It was funny, but it wasn't like my favorite Lynn Painter book. Then I read Good Material by Dolly Alderton. Did not like this book. Was not a fan. I've never read a book that was solely from a male main character's point of view. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I think even in the review, I put that the male main character was super, super whiny. And he was like very clingy. He didn't really know like what he wanted to do. He pretty much kind of like threw his life away. And I get it. Men go through things just like women go through things. I just personally didn't enjoy the way the story was told. And then I read or listened to Rich AF by Vivian 2. Again, not gonna get into like the self-help finance book thing. And then we're gonna go ahead and move forward. These so far all the books that I read in August. So let's jump into that. I did Same Time Next Summer by Annabelle Monaghan. That book was interesting. It was very, very interesting. I'm gonna say really for me, I know it was like a summer favorite for a lot of booktubers. I barely remember it. Okay, it was a really cutesy book. It hit on some tough points. The female main character was going through a lot. Her life was pretty much falling apart. But other than that, I'm gonna be honest with you, I barely remember what the rest of the book was about. Okay, and then I discovered an artist, wow, an author that I really, really like so far. I think I read the most of her books last year, and that's Ellen Hildebrand. I think I'm saying her name correctly. I read Winter in Paradise, and then What Happens in Paradise, along with Troubles in Paradise. Now that was a whole series, and it had me hooked from book 1. I will say book 3 the ending didn't really hit for me, but it was still really, really good. Essentially the female main character's husband has a whole secret life with a whole secret family in the Virgin Islands, and she only finds out about it because he dies mysteriously with his mistress. Y'all, it was messy, but in the best possible way. So I read those books along with The Identicals by Ellen Hildebrand. And this is about identical twin sisters who live in Martha's Vineyard and, what's the other place? Is Martha's Vineyard and something else. Like the islands the wealthy people go to like kick back, relax, enjoy themselves. The whole book was filled with grief, strife. The plot was there. It was great. It was gripping. It kept me like locked into the book the entire time. It was also very sad at points. But then you see where the sisters, they were very, very close, and then something happened, something tragic happened to one of the sisters, and then they drifted apart, and then they were able to come back together in their adult life. But I do hate that it took so many years for them to find themselves again. It is a good book. All of Ellen Hildebrand's books are really, really good. I am so sorry for butchering that. And then the next series that I started and I need to finish, actually it's so far, no, it is going to be a series. It is. It's going to have more than 2 books. So far, there's only 2 books, but the third one is in the works. The first book that I read, it was Assistant to the Villain. And this is by Hannah Nicole Mayer. I love this book, and I'm also kind of pissed because I had the book with the red sprayed edges, and I sent it home via UPS, and they lost my package with my books. And now I can't find the red sprayed edges of this book. I listened to this with the audiobook because I would have butchered a lot of the words because this is fantasy. I'm not gonna say it's YA because the female main character and male main character, they're grown as adults. But the female main character, Evie, she is down on her luck. She lost her previous job, and then she just so happens to bump into the villain, and then he realized that she's super sassy and she's no nonsense, and he offers her a job to be his assistant. She comes in and she basically changes his life. Well, not changes his life, but she makes his workflow, like at his castle, like she turns the whole process around for him to the point where his castle barely runs without her intervening into everything. And then there is a little frog who has the ability to communicate with his signs. Probably can't see it over the buy one get one 50% off sticker from Barnes & Noble, but he's on the back here. His name is Kingsley, and he wears a little crown. You guys, the way this story is told is absolutely hilarious. And me personally, I am a sucker for the villain's origin story. I love that there are a lot of books being remade in the villain's image and showing you guys why they are the way they are and why things went down the way they went down. I am a fan of Maleficent with Angelina Jolie playing her. I do like the Peter Pan slash Hook retellings, the Cinderella retellings. I love those kind of books. So I am so ready to read the second book in this series, and I am definitely purchasing the third book in the series. I do have the second book. It is somewhere. Oh, it's right here. And this one has the sprayed edges. So I'm hoping the third book does as well, but I can't wait to read this. I was supposed to read it in October, but I didn't really get around to it. And then I started like my holiday reads, but this is definitely on my TBR, my physical TBR. But this book was hilarious. Please pick it up if you haven't. I thought it was going to be super childish. It's not. I laughed, and then there was a heartbreaking moment in there, and then the female main character pretty much bossed up. So definitely read that. The next book was the 5 a.m. Club. Not gonna get into it. And then the only book I DNF'd, and I DNF'd it at 80%, was Honey Girl. And that is because, and this is by Morgan Rogers, I should have just read the physical book, but I started listening to the audiobook before I bought the book, and the narrator, terrible, absolutely terrible. 10 out of 10 would not recommend. And that is why that book got DNF'd at 80%. The only book I've ever DNF'd in my life. Then the next book that I read was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This intrigued me because I read, what is it called? Circe by Madeline Miller. And I really enjoy like Greek and Roman mythology retellings. Those are like my favorite kind of books. And this gave a different spin on how we know Achilles to be. So if you guys are into Greek Roman mythology and you don't mind listening to the audiobook version, I would say listen to the audiobook because these books are dense. Like Circe's pretty thick. This is not a small book, and I read this like 2 years ago. Please pick it up. It is a good book. And then the next book I read, because I was trying to try something different, and I'm going to tell you right now, I did not like it. The Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. It was very creepy, and those are not the vibes I go for. I am very much a fantasy, romance, comedy, action-packed read. I do not like suspenseful horror, gothic, like dark. I don't like those kind of books, and this book was creepy as hell. So I didn't sit right with it. The next book that I listened to was Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. First of all, I was pissed the entire time reading this book. There are some little bouts of racism in here, so please take that with a grain of salt before you guys pick this up. But that is how it is supposed to be written, okay? The way that you get immersed into this book, if it pulls strong emotion out of you, it's supposed to. I think I rated this 4-star. I'm not sure, but this book had me upset, but in the best possible way, because any book that pulls any kind of strong emotion out of me is a book for me to read. I do want to pick up the other book she has. It's called Babel, and I think that one came out before Yellowface, so I definitely want to pick that up. And then I think she's working on something else. I am trying to get into it, but essentially in Yellowface, the two female main characters, one's Asian and then one is white. The Asian female character dies, and the white female character, she's always kind of like jealous of this person. They're both writers, by the way. The Asian female main character was working on a book. The white main character took said manuscript and turned it into her own, and it gets completely messy from there. So check it out if you guys want to check it out. The next book that I read, because again, I am definitely into my Greek Roman mythology era, is Stone Blind. It is basically a Medusa retelling. It's by Natalie Haynes. Pick it up if you are into those kind of books. It is really good. It gives you a very different take on how Medusa became Medusa, okay? And then also her Gorgon sisters. So if you guys are interested, pick it up. The next book that I have, and I'm waiting for the physical book to get here now, is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I effing love that book. It was so good, by V.E. Schwab. It was dense. It was like 17 hours. I was upset. I was happy. I teared up. This book will take you through all the emotions, and it is crazy. It is about this girl from like the 1800s. She's French. She basically doesn't want to be married off to someone just to appease her family and make sure that they're taken care of. So she asks this dark, like magical or mythical creature, well, creature, person, whatever, however you want to call them, to help her change her life. And she doesn't read the fine print in the deal that she makes, or she doesn't specify exactly what it is that she wants. And he kind of takes it and runs with it, and he turns her life upside down. And she lives for over 300 years. But the story, the way it is told, it is a beautiful story that will pull some emotion out of you. The next book that I read, and I should have known better, it was Velvet Was the Night by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I didn't like it. I wanted to like it because of the time frame that it was set in and what was going on in the book, but the narrator really messed this up for me. And I don't know if it was because it was a white person trying to reenact like Hispanic people and voices and accents, but I was not here for it. I didn't like it. I should have DNF'd it, but I pushed through and I just didn't enjoy it. And then the next book that I read, these are actually, I have them on Kindle, but I also have the audiobook as well, because apparently if you have the audiobook and then you open it up in Kindle, it'll read out the book as it goes through. But it was my first Megan Quinn book. It was a Not So Meet Cute. And I will be purchasing this book along with the other two books in the series because it's about the Kane brothers. This book was cute. The female main character was super sassy. She took no shit from the male main character, and that is what made him fall in love with her. And then they also did some fake dating, fake marriage kind of thing. It was hilarious until it wasn't, but I am still interested in finishing out the series. I do have those on Kindle as well, so I will be reading those books. And then the next book I read was Here's to Us by Ellen Hildebrand. Again, love this author. I think I read she was the most read author I had for 2024. I really wish I had my Fable reading wrap up, but they took that away for whatever reason, so bear with me. But again, it's one of those books that kind of takes place on an island. It is like a feel-good thing. It's very picturesque, the way that like the place is explained, the beach, the water, the scent, the smell. Like I really feel like I'm on the beach whenever I read her books, because they always take place somewhere in, oh, Nantucket is the other place. They always take place in Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, or somewhere in the Virgin Islands or the Bahamas, but somewhere tropical. So I always feel like I'm getting pulled into like not cozy, but like a beachy vacation. So that's, her books are really, really good for that. I think I want to try and pick up more of those over the summer. I know she has some winter-based books, but I do want to finish getting through the summer books. The next book that I read, and I really want to buy this book as well, The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic. This book was really sad, but I was happy with the ending for the female main character. It's one of those cozy, witchy reads for October, and that is when I read this book. I did read it in October. I finished it pretty early. It was about 12 hours, give or take, but I usually finish my audiobooks, if they're really good, really gripping, in about 2 to 3 days. I think the longest time it's taken me to finish an audiobook was like a week, and that really just depends on whatever it is I have going on throughout the week, because again, I do have a civilian job and I am still in the military, so a lot of my time is being split up between that, and then I try to get in as many books as I can. But that was a really good cozy book, and I want to say it was UK based, and it does talk a lot about like teas, and there are recipes in this book. There are recipes that you can recreate and eat or drink or whatever it is you want to do, and I thought that was adorable. So check that book out for next spooky season if you guys want to. And then the next 3 books were in a series. It actually, I think it's 4. It should be 4, and then I picked up the other books later. But all of these books are by Lana Harper. It's like her witchy series. So I did Payback's a Witch, Back in a Spell, In Charm's Way, From Bad to Cursed. And the only reason why I read the second book so far out of line was because it was not available. I had to wait for that to become available. And then I also got to read her last book, Rise and Divine. Those books are great for like October, November. They are queer reads. All of the main characters are female, and they are witches, and they come from this town that's like, it's in Illinois, so it's not too far from Chicago. And basically The longer and closer they stay to the town, the more their powers work. The further they get away from it, or the further disconnect there is from the family, the less of their magic works. But these stories were all really gripping. The first one was very, very funny. And the third one was as well. But I did enjoy every book in the series. So check that out for October if you guys are interested. The next book that I read that was super heartbreaking and it made me tear up was Adelaide by Genevieve Wheeler. Y'all, this book, there's so many trigger warnings with this too. So if you were a survivor of DV or just any kind of abuse in your life, please be careful when you go and read this book, because I went off the vibes of the cover, didn't read too much into it, and I clicked play and it got sad real fast. And then the next book that I read was Mom Made by Jessica George. So the female main character is Black, but she lives in the UK, and her struggles that she have with that, and then being the daughter who is a primary caretaker of her family, like her mom's back and forth to Africa, her brother's nowhere to be found to help her, and then her dad is just sick and going through things, and she is trying her best to just keep herself afloat and then keep her family afloat, and then there's an opportunity for her to actually live her life, and she's very timid about doing it at first, and then she really jumps into it full force. And then she also finds out she's struggling with some mental health issues, so there's some trigger warnings with that one as well. But if you guys are interested, it was a really good read, and I want to say, is it one of like Reese Witherspoon's like book club picks? I think it is, but it was a really good book, so check that out if you are interested. I am trying to do more of like getting into books by people of color, because that is one of those things that I want to focus on heavily, and give them their flowers where the flowers are due. The next book that I read, again going back to like Greek and Roman myth, is Electra by Jennifer Saint. This book was interesting. It took me a little while to get into it because there were so many different POVs being introduced. It was really hard to kind of keep up with it. But again, interesting nonetheless. And like I said, I'm very, very into the Greek and Roman myth. It's really hard to explain these books. You really have to have some kind of background knowledge, like very base background knowledge of the characters, and then kind of go into it. But a lot of the times these Greek and Roman myth books that I'm reading, they are focusing more on the female main characters, because we get a lot about Hercules and Achilles and Zeus and Poseidon, but no one ever tells you about the women in their life and how they suffered so that the men could get to these positions of power and, you know, be recognized. So that book really does a good job of breaking that down. And the next book that I read that was also a Reese Witherspoon book club pick was Did You Hear About Kitty Carr? This book is interesting because Kitty Carr is mixed race, but she passes for white because she has her mother's blue eyes and she has fair skin and decent hair. And this is back in a time where if women who were doing that got caught, they go to jail, get beaten, or worse. So this book is very interesting in that regard. And again, I do love contemporary fiction, historical fiction. So this book was right up there and it did a lot for me. It was 13 hours. I didn't think I was going to enjoy it, but I really, really, really got into it. And I really felt for Kitty Carr. I mean, beginning, middle, and end. But it was a really good book with a really interesting plot twist. So pick that one up if you haven't. The next book that I read was Expiration Dates by Rebecca Surley. This is the third book of hers that I read. I did read One Italian Summer and then In 5 Years. And I know she has other books. I'm very interested because she does magical realism really well. One Italian Summer and In 5 Years were so damn good. Like, she did such a good job of explaining Italy in One Italian Summer and New York in 5 years that I feel like if I go to those places and see some of the things that were described in the books, I would know exactly like what they are. Like, they would feel like a revisit and not a first visit, if that makes sense. So Rebecca Surley does magical realism really well, and I really hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. But if you haven't picked up any of her books, please do. They're always really short, quick reads. Expiration Dates was like 7 hours. So check it out, please. The next book I read was Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan. This one was a little bit better than the first book that I read because it was about a woman who ended up becoming a single mom, and a woman trying to find her voice and take care of her kids and take care of herself and love herself and find love and just do things for herself that she stopped doing after she lost her mother. So There is some grief, there is some loss, there is some heartache, but it was a good book, and I understand it, and it connected with me because of like the single mom thing. But other than that, I would say check it out. I want to say I gave it anywhere between like 3 and 4 stars. Again, I'll have that stuff here for you guys. Back to the Greek and Roman myth. I don't know what, I was just on a kick with these books, but another book by Jennifer Saint, it was Ariadne. And Ariadne is a princess from Crete. I may be wrong. I'll put the correct wherever she's from here. But eventually what happens is there's a lot that goes on, and she ends up marrying the god Dionysus. And I did not know his backstory was so dark. If you guys are into Greek and Roman myth, you're gonna get tired of hearing me say that. You have to read it because it is so hard to like break these books down to what they really are, because they interweave so many gods and goddesses and kings and queens and princesses and princes that it is a lot. Also know she ended up with Dionysus because her mother ended up being tricked by a god, who turned her into a cow. He turned into a bull. They procreated, and she had a son who ended up being the Minotaur, who terrorized everyone who was thrown into the labyrinth. So like I said, it's a lot, but check it out if you guys are interested. The next 2 books that I read were by Jasmine Guillory, and I think I read these out of order, I'm not sure, but I read The Wedding Date and then Party of Two. Essentially, both of the female main characters are black, they're sisters, and they ended up falling for white male main characters, which that's not a problem. I love black love, but I also love interracial love because I am interracial or biracial, whatever you want to call it. It's just a way that these stories kind of played out. But again, I'm trying to read more books by black authors, and I enjoy these. Were they like my favorite reads? No, but I will pick up more Jasmine Guillory books because I've heard really good things about her. The next book that I read, and we're in November, is Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. I want to read more of her books. So the narrator is from Canada, which means she put the setting where the meeting for the characters took place in Canada. And of course, if you guys don't already know, this is the accidental pregnancy trope kind of book, and I was not expecting to like this as much as I did. And she also has a few other books. I think it's interconnected standalones. I don't think that they are books you have to necessarily read in any order, but they are. I've heard great things about the other books, and I am interested in picking up the physical copies of those books. But this book, like I said, pleasantly surprised. The female main character has a deformity in one of her hands where it is much smaller than her other hand, and then the male main character, he had bone cancer and ended up losing a leg. So it is like the disability trope as well, accidental pregnancy trope, and then forced proximity as well. But it is a very good read. It's also very heartbreaking as well, but you guys can stick with it. If you can get into it, please get into it. And then all the books that I read in December, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this thing up because this video is getting pretty long. I read The Kiss Countdown by Etta Easton, and I know she has other books that are coming out. I love this, and I'm gonna say I'm very biased because this book took place in Texas. And that is where I currently live, and specifically it took place in Houston. And the male main character is an astronaut who works for NASA, and the female main character is an event planner. She recently got fired. She's down on her luck. Her mom's sick, her dad's retired. She's trying to keep them happy, make sure they're good to go, as well as trying to keep herself afloat. And it ended up being, I was able to guess what was going to happen towards the end, but it was still a really, really good story. And it is another black author whose book I actually enjoyed. So I am waiting for her next book to come out, if it's not out already, and then I'll be reading that. But this was a good book. And then the next book that I read was, and I'm saying read, but listen to. These are audiobooks, okay, you guys? The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes. Jojo Moyes. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering that, but this book was, I did not know what I thought this book was going to be about, but based on the title and what happened in the book, I was like, whoa, what am I reading? It was really good though, and it makes me want to get into other books by the author, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Then I also read The 5-Star Weekend by Ellen Hildebrand. Again, real messy, takes place, they bring you out to the beach, and it's very summer vibes, but that is not how things go down. It is very, very messy, and I love the way Ellen Hildebrand does the messy books. Then I also read another book that was pretty trendy via Book Talk, not Book Talk, I'm sorry, Book of the Month, and that was The Blue Sisters by Coco Mellers, I don't know. But it was very interesting, and as someone, I'm the oldest of 5, and it's 4 girls and 1 boy, so I do have sisters, so I did understand a lot of the strife and the things and the disconnect that was going on in this book, and it was heartbreaking as well. And then there was a beautiful ending to the book. If you haven't read anything by this author, please pick up this book. I know she also did Cleopatra and Frankenstein. I haven't picked that one up yet. I'm kind of scared, but I will give it a go after reading Blue Sisters, and it is one of those top books up there for me. Then I also read The Spell Shop. I don't know why I read this. Oh, I started in November, but I finished in December, so that's why it's in December. Y'all, this was so cute, so cozy. So essentially, the female main character who this book really centers around, she works in this library in the Citadel, like this huge main place, and only certain people can practice magic. What happens is there's a revolution. She's trying to save the books as well as her sentient spider plant, Cass, who is so sassy. We love Cass. And she ends up fleeing back to where she's from, and she stays in like this cottage, and she is trying to help revive the land because the people who do have access to magic, they are misusing it and they are causing all kind of chaos. But this was super cute, super cozy, very quick, easy read, and we love the sprayed edges. They kept it simple. But it is definitely worth picking up. I want to say Sarah Beth Durst has another book coming out. It's very much giving winter vibes, but I think it comes out in March. But I'm definitely interested in picking it up after reading this because I do want to see where she takes it. I think it's called The Greenhouse. I'm very, very much interested. And then I also read, let's see what I got on Spotify. I read Two Can Play by Allie Hazelwood. It's essentially a novella, but like strictly an audiobook that was released on Spotify. It was okay. It's not really my thing. I used to game. I definitely had a Nintendo 64. We had the very first PlayStation when it came out. We also had Xbox. I had a PlayStation Portable. I had all the Game Boys. And then I also had Nintendo DS. I now currently only have a Nintendo Switch Lite. It doesn't have the controllers that kind of come off of it, and I use it to play Hogwarts Legacy as well as Mario Kart, and then like a lot of the old games like Bejeweled, Solitaire, those kind of things. So a lot of the stuff in this book, Two Can Play by Allie Hazelwood, it made sense, but it didn't really click for me because the things that I do and the way that I'm attached to like gaming is very, very minimal, if that makes sense. But it was a good read if you guys want to listen to it on Spotify. Then I also read and listened to The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. I know these are like TikTok famous, and a lot of people have so much to say about these books. This book in particular did give Gilmore Girls vibes, and I guess that makes sense because the author's name is Lori Gilmore. But you guys, these books are not supposed to be anything spectacular, or at least that's not how I feel about it. These are supposed to be short. Well, not short, because they are pretty dense. They're about 350-ish pages, but these are supposed to be cute, cozy reads. These are not supposed to be, oh my god, they had this epic romance and they did all these things. At least that's not how I feel about it. But this first book definitely gave Gilmore Girl vibes, and I do love that she has so many of these books out, and the covers are adorable, and I'm loving the little white cat here at the bottom. But essentially the female main character walks in on and finds her boss's dead body at his desk, and she doesn't want that to be her life. So she goes and she takes over the Pumpkin Spice Cafe for her aunt. There's an apartment over the restaurant, the cafe, and then she ends up running into the town grump, and they end up falling in love, but not before there was like a whole lot of strife. And of course, you know, when you stay in a small town, people are nosy. So nosy, and she is just going through like this whole thing with the male main character and like the town, and he had his heart broken, which is why he's so grumpy, and everyone in town knows that, and he doesn't want that to continue to be his life. But another thing that I like about this is that these books all have playlists that you can listen to on Spotify. So if you are not an audiobook girl or guy, you can just listen to the playlist while you read the book, and I thought that was ingenious to include in the book. And of course, when I read this, I picked this one up. I do think that this one should have came before this one, because the Pumpkin Spice Cafe is technically the first book, and then the Cinnamon Bun Bookstore is the second book. But because of this was like, it took place in October, November, and then this took place in the summer and led into the fall. But you do want to try to read them in order, because a lot of the books interweave the characters from previous books. But this was super, super cute, because not only is it about a bookstore, it's a book about a bookstore, but the female main character is so bookish, it really spoke to me. And the person that is her love interest, he's a little bit younger than her, not by a whole lot. I want to say there's like a 4 or 5 year age difference, but he shows her pretty much how to have fun before she turns 30. And I feel like that part right there resonated with me so much, because I feel like I used to have so much fun in my early 20s, and then I was like, okay, I'm done with this. I need to grow up. I need to do all these things. I got bills to pay. I got a kid to take care of, etc. And this was just great. And then also, the name of the bookstore is so adorable. They also serve cinnamon buns from one of the friends who gets interwoven into this. They sell the cinnamon buns in the store. So can you imagine walking into a bookstore in a small town? It smells like books and cinnamon buns. Phenomenal. I did love it. And then this one, of course, does have its own playlist as well. I'm going to show it to you guys. So again, if you're not interested in immersive reading, you can just listen to it. And then I also I listened to the fan fiction novel, and fan fiction, it's about vampires, you guys. It is about humans discovering that characters from a popular series are actually real, and one of the female main character gets stuck on the island that the vampires are trapped in, and I love it. There is essay in there that is mentioned in the book, so please be careful with that if that is a trigger for you guys. But it was a really good book. And then the next one that I listened to on Spotify was The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. You guys, this was found family, cute, cozy, took place in the UK? Yeah, the UK. And the female main character is Indian, but she grew up in the UK. And the male main character or love interest is Scottish. And you guys, the female main character's story as well as the male main character's story is heartbreaking, but it has kids in here, and I usually don't care for kids in books, but this was done so well that I really just didn't mind. I felt like I actually at one point sat down with tea while I was reading this book, and it was so cute. I loved it. I'm so glad I have a physical copy of the book. But something about like fantasy witches who are doing good things with their magic, and there's not like a whole lot of like mess or death involved. It just gets to me, especially when they're from like the UK or Scotland or something like that. Love, 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 love. And then the last few books that I read are Christmas books, and then I'm going to be done with this. I'm going to wrap this thing up. I read these books along with listening to the audiobooks. The Wedding Witch by Erin Sterling. This is the third book in the series. The X-Hex and the Kiss Curse. This was a cutesy little read. Again, we love the witchy rom-coms, and it took place in December, which is why I read it in December. Shoot, my battery's about to die. Hold on, guys. Okay, so yeah, I was talking about this one. So this, like I said, it's the third installment in a series. It wasn't anything to write home about. It was super short, super quick. I want to say it was like 270 or 80 pages, 276 pages. This I was able to read in one day, and I adored it. It did bring up the characters from the other books, the Kiss Curse and the X-Hex. So if you guys haven't read those before, you can definitely read those. I would say read the first two books in October and November, and then read this one in December, because it does, even though it is about witches, it takes place, there's a wedding on, it's either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, and there's the element of time travel in here as well. So this is super cute, super quick, interesting read. And then I did finish up the Lori Gilmore series, and I ended up reading the Christmas Tree Farm. This one was so much cuter, because I rarely read books where the female is the grumpy person and the male is the sunshine. And the female main character, she moved there. She's trying to reinvent herself. She's originally from Georgia, comes from money, and the male main character is the female main character from the first book's brother. um so like I said, they interweave a lot of the characters. And then here is a map of Dream Harbor if you guys are ever interested. It is in this book along with the Christmas-ish playlist for this book. So again, these books are not supposed to be like extraordinary, super crazy, like life-changing, life-affirming, whatever. They're just cute, quick reads. And when I say quick, they're like 342 pages. You can read this in 2 sittings if you wanted to, but I love listening to the audiobooks with these. And this book just so happens to have, I want to say, the first 2 chapters of the Strawberry Patch Pancake House. I'm waiting for that one. And I think she also has another like Christmas holiday book called The Gingerbread Bakery coming out. Super excited to continue with this series. Again, it is it's super cute, you guys. It's not supposed to be like crazy, but essentially the female main character buys the Christmas tree farm and then says that she's not going to open it, but she used all of her inheritance. She gave half of it away, and then she used the rest of it to purchase this farm, this Christmas tree farm, and she needs to open it to stay afloat, because if you don't have the money coming in, you're not gonna be able to keep this place running. And then the male main character is such a sweetheart, golden retriever, like just, I want to help you, I want to fix all the things that are going wrong, and she has a hard time allowing him to do that. And then she eventually lets him do that, and they realize that they love each other and they don't want to spend time apart from each other, and it just kind of goes from there. So if you guys are interested in this series, I know it's like super overhyped on TikTok, but I enjoyed it, so give it a read. I have about 3 more Christmas books, and then we are pretty much done with all the books that I listened to, as well as read physical copies of the books with. I listened to this on Audible, The Christmas Fix. I did not know this was the second book in a series. The first book is The Fixer Upper, but I just picked this up because, hello, Christmas. But the female main character in this book, I freaking love her. She decked a guy and broke his nose because he got really handsy and was very disrespectful to her. So she was within every right to deck him. But she is basically the sunshine in the book, but she's also super sassy, takes no bullshit. Like, she doesn't want to hear from anybody, and she will go out and she will prove you wrong in so many ways. And the male main character in this book, the love interest, is like, nope, I don't want you here, I don't need you here, bringing all this craziness to my town, etc., etc. And she sets him straight so hard that they end up having so much like tension, including like sexual tension, that when it finally breaks, you're like, God damn it, about time. This was a really good book. The female main character has a heart of gold, and the male main character learns how to have fun again. He's also I'm not gonna say a single dad, he's a co-parent, because the mom is still in the picture. She's just getting married to another person. They're not together. They ended up being friends for the sake of their child, and they all live in the same town. But again, I usually don't like kids in books, but the daughter she's hilarious. She's too smart for her own damn good, and I love her. And she ends up loving the female main character as well. But this was such a good read, so funny. If you guys have never picked up a Lucy Score book, please do, because the first book I ever picked up by her was The Dead Guy Next Door, and I'm so ready to finish that series because that was funny as hell. And then the next book is a reread or re-listen, Christina Lauren in a Holidays. This has magical realism in it and a bit of time travel aspect, or like a repeating of the same day, just to kind of help you guys right there. And it is about May and 2 brothers. That's all I'm gonna say. So if you haven't picked up a Christina Lauren book and you want to, this is good for the holidays. I have re-listened to this at least 3 times, and I'm here for it. So that's all I'm gonna give you guys. Just go with it. And then the last book, and this one is interesting because you either hate it or you love it. And this is my second Megan Quinn book, but it is How My Neighbor Stole Christmas. I have some marks in here, and this is all the pictures. That was what that was. And then anytime there was some bickering between Cole and the narrator, I have that in there. And then the little rhymes at the beginning of each chapter. Like, you guys, the thought and the detail that Megan Quinn put into this book, like having pictures. I haven't had pictures in a chapter book in forever, but having pictures in this thing made this so worth, like, how long she made this book. At first I thought it was a bit overkill, but then I got into it. I'm trying to find you guys where the narrator and Cole are bickering here. Her attention to detail in this book, like, just blew my fucking mind, because a lot of authors don't put that much detail into their books anymore. No one puts pictures into long chapter books anymore. No one thinks to have one of the main characters go back and forth with the narrator. Like, there was a part where Cole was bickering with the narrator, and then she wrote in the fact that he was wearing a thong. It was hilarious. Okay, I love Story. Story Taylor is the female main character. They go back to Kringle Town in Colorado because their aunt broke her hip taking out gingerbread cookies from the oven. I'm using quotes because if you read this, you know. And then Cole Black, which the play on words there, Cole Black is the male main character. He is like the town grump, but he has a reason to be the town grump. He lost his parents 10 years ago and he just doesn't know how to, like, start up his life again. And then these two characters reunite and things get fixed and things go to hell and then things get fixed again. It's interesting. If you are a Megan Quinn, like, fan, you like all of her other books, I think this book is worth the read. I mean, yes, it is long. She's long. And I read this oh my god, I'm trying to get to how many pages. There's an epilogue in here. It's like well over 450 pages. It is long, but you guys, pick it up. Pick it up. If you don't want to physically flip through the book, get your butts on Audible and use one of your credits to purchase this book. But I thought this was funny. Was it a bit long? Could have been shortened by 100 pages or so? Yes. But was it worth it once you got to the end? Again, yes. This was a super cute retelling of how the Grinch stole Christmas, and I thoroughly enjoyed it and can't wait to see what else Megan Quinn comes out with. And I need to take a break. I need some water because I've been talking for well over an hour. But those are all of the audiobooks that I read in 2024. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.